Esse é mais um programa Poesia ao Meio-Dia, da Cátedra William Butler Yeats, que acontece sempre às últimas quartas-feiras do mês. E esse mês temos a honra das presenças da senhora Susan Roy e da poeta Meio. Sem delongas, passo a palavra à senhora Susan Roy. Muito obrigada.
Olá a todos e todas. Once more, I'm delighted to be back here with you again for a new edition of our Poesia Meio. And here in Ireland, it's February. It's a time when we see brighter days and longer evenings coming to our land. Spring is springing, and this brings with it a great feeling of hope. And on February the 1st, we celebrated St. Bridget's Day, which is now a national holiday here with us. And this holiday has now brought into perspective the importance of women and our place in society. We've always felt, and I've certainly felt, that the female voice is essential for a thriving society. And now at last, we are recognizing the new reality. And with this new holiday, we're celebrating this freedom and this newfound self-identity that's being recognized all over the world. And how women are making waves in every aspect of modern Irish life and indeed global life. So this wonderful woman, St. Bridget, has inspired many writings. And today, our poet, our guest poet, Mary O'Malley, has also penned a poem entitled St. Bridget's Windfall, which I would now like to read for you. St. Bridget's Windfall. So this is love. Your step on the watery stair, the sheepskin nuzzling our feet, a kept flame in a tower and nothing to repent. I am the ripening moon, like other women at last, glowing under your hand. Now the hopeless war is past. I sleep content. So Giselle is going to give you a version as Português.
Obrigada, Susan. A sorte inesperada de Santa Brígida. Então isto é um amor. Você pisa na escada molhada, a pele de carneiro acaricia os nossos pés. Uma chama se mantém na torre, e nada há de que nos arrependamos. Por fim, sou a lua, que amadurece como as outras mulheres, incandescendo sob as suas mãos, e agora a guerra desesperada passa, e eu durmo contente. So our guest today is Mary O'Malley, a great poet with more than 9 books of poetry. Thank you so much, Mary, for taking the time, for being with us. Thank you, Susan, also. It's wonderful to have you with us. And Mary O'Malley has won many prizes, and she started her career as a poet back in the 1990s, and I had the honor of meeting her live and presentially back in 2011, I think, in one of the ISO conferences. And I'm always surprised with her writings. Today, she gave us the honor of bringing some poems. She's going to read us some poems of her next book coming out in the following summer, The Shark Nursery. And let me ask you something, Mary. This next book of yours eternalizes maritime life and other planets. Before we read the first poem, Distance, can you tell us a bit about your time in Portugal, since you lived in Portugal for 8 years, and how it's influenced you into writing the poem Distance, please?
Muito obrigada, Gisele, e estou muito feliz de estar aqui hoje com vocês, Susan, e as outras pessoas que estão a trabalhar nesta recording, transmissão. It's lovely to be with you. Yes, I'll just say a few words about distance. I lived in Portugal for 8 years, but I lived in Portugal, first of all, just after the revolution, 4 years after the revolution. And Portugal has changed almost unimaginably in the time since then. Also, my children were born there, and I was a very young woman when I went there. And so part of the distance in this poem is the distance of years, of calendar time. And part of it is the linguistic distance. And part of it is about how we take people and life and language, indeed, with us right through our lives as we get older. Not in the traditional closed narrative sense of this happened and then this happened and then something else happened, but in a way that when I read the poem will become obvious what I think what I'm saying, how we almost people are reconstructing in front of us in a very tiny moment in the air, like a hologram. I use that in the poem. And very often this is connected for me and for a lot of writers, I think, by language. And so the reason the poem has at the beginning the lines from Meio, that wonderful Brazilian song, is the great soundtrack to my years in Portugal was primarily Brazilian. It was the first time I heard Brazilian music, and what else could you listen to? It was the first time I had Brazilian friends. It was so musical. The language itself, as spoken in Brazil, is so musical. E português é então pouco mais, é bastante diferente no sotaque continental. And so that soundtrack ran through my life. But my daughter, almost as soon as she could talk, used to sing Sonia Mail, and she happened to have a very lovely voice. And even when we moved back to Ireland, and I was afraid she had forgotten a lot of the Portuguese, she would play the tape with, I can't remember which recording, as we know, all the main singers, a lot of singers have sung that song, and she would sing the refrain. So I'd hear this from her bedroom, this perfectly sung Brazilian Portuguese.
Beautiful, thank
Even
you.
though she was no longer speaking it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So let's listen to the poem. I should give the audience first the translation and then we delve into the original in the poet's own voice. A distância. Vai buscar quem mora longe, sonho meu, do Ivone Lara. Por anos, imagens tuas juntas no ar, holograma atrás de holograma, com teu riso, a tua voz doce cantando. Sonho meu, uma flor carregada pelo vento. Depois, cada vez menos de ti, mais vestígios. Livros escolares na varanda, o seu sorriso vertiginoso, uma nuvem, um chumaço de cabelo veio e desapareceu. E então, apenas os espaços que ecoam onde permaneci. O eco. Não sei dizer quando comecei a desaparecer. Tudo que ficou, estes rabiscos, quaisquer, e a proa deste navio a que me prenderam, quando eu ainda era útil. Logo, até isso será apagado. Se você os pressionar, eles vão cantar. Sonho meu.
Muito obrigada, Gisele. Tão gira, tão bonita. E mais suave do que o poema em inglês. Distance. Vai buscar quem mora longe, sonho meu. Dona Ivone Lara. For years, visions of you assembled in the air, hologram after hologram, with your laugh, your sweet voice singing, sonho meu, a flower swayed by the wind. Then there was less of you, more traces. Then there was less of you, more traces. School books in the porch, your birthday smile. A cloud of hair came and disappeared. Then only the echoing spaces where I stayed echo. I don't know when I started to fade. All that is left are a few outlines and the prow of this ship they tied me to when I was still useful. Soon, even that will be erased and my bones will become stone. If you strike them, they will sing, sonho meu.
Muito obrigada. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Okay, so our next poem, Mary, that you chose to read for us is a poem called Erasure. Can you tell us a little bit more about that word erasure and why you chose to use that in the title?
Well, I found this, I started during lockdown, a lot of these were written during lockdown, and I started looking up things I never look up, which are angels. And the reason I never look up angels is because you get every lunatic and crackpot in the world on your screen within 2 seconds. And I'm not going any further with what kind of crackpots. But I eventually found my way to this fantastic website, which just has a very factual list of Islamic angels, Old Testament angels. I mean, I found one angel, for example, who has responsibility. They have just one job, to paint women's eyelids.
Oh, I want her.
That's his job. And I think, anyway, I found this particular angel who, well, he's a well-known angel from the Old Testament, I think, in this case. And his job is to write down your life every day and then rub it out and start again the following day. And I was very stunned by that notion that every day it was rubbed out and he started again. And then finally at the end, and obviously I have another poem about the fates. So clearly there's a certain age element coming into all of this. But also I think it's about how, I don't want to push it because I wasn't thinking of this, but you could read it as you could read into it the fact that people are brushed out with age, wiped out, off the map. Particularly some people say women. I'm not sure, I don't know about that. That's not what I was writing, but I realized afterwards that could be part of it. That's just, so it's about this guy landing in my garden. And I think he's come to cut the string, to cut the cord. So, shall I read it first, or?
Do you want to do the translation, Giselle, maybe?
I'll start with the translation then. O apagamento. Satélite ou uma estrela em forma de homem é o que menos se espera de céu próximo, de maneira indesejada. Adentrou o portão e a hospitalidade solicitou que eu fosse educada, servisse bolo com café, a sua pequena comitiva, leite ao seu gato. Pensei que já estivesse acabado com as estrelas e os emissários, tipo saídos de um raro deslumbre da luz do dia e tudo. Por fim, ele disse, ele falou daquele modo tranquilo que eles têm, sou Azrael, claro que você está no meu livro. E permaneceu ali sentado, apagando nomes, conforme bebia do café e comia do bolo. Você veio para me apagar? Perguntei-lhe. Ah, não, ele disse. Olhe, e vi o meu próprio nome desaparecer feito um raio-x. A sua própria espécie está fazendo isso. Ele falou gentilmente. Pensei.
Obrigada, thank you. Erasure. Least expected from a low sky, a man-shaped star or satellite came unwanted over the gate to the door, and hospitality demanded I be polite, serve cake and tea to his small retinue, milk to his cat. I thought I had done with stars and their emissaries, figures etched out of the scarce dazzle of daylight, all that. Finally he spoke. I, he said, in that quiet way they have, am Azrael. You're in my book, of course. And sat there, erasing names as he drank my tea, ate my cake. Did you come to rub me out? I asked. Oh no, he said, look. And I saw my own name, faded like an X-ray. Your own kind are doing that. He spoke kindly, I thought.
I love that line, your own kind are doing that. I find that, particularly worrying in another way, that, all around us, we're people that do erase other people from our lives in more ways than one. So,
and in war.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Like
Knowledge.
nowadays, and and also just by thoughtlessness and not having time.
Sometimes deliberately.
Yeah. And like I also do think that people also feel raised because of like family gone and kids grown up, and that kind of thing definitely comes into it for me as a woman as well, that my kids are all gone now and stuff, and I sometimes feel like, oh well, what am I supposed to be? I've got so much spare time. Not.
No.
How did I ever manage to do it?
That's the extraordinary thing, actually. Yeah.
That's it. Exactly. You just look back and say, how did I do it? My sister had an answer to that question, and she said, with lots of gin.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Just going on, in another interview, you said the waves were the rhythm I live by. And this is in relation to the next poem we're going to hear from you, The Shark Nursery. And I know out there in Galway and in my own Mayo, we're all very influenced by the sea and the wonder of the sea. But also, could you explain a little bit about that context of the waves being the rhythm you live by?
The rhythm is quite simply the truth. I was raised very close to the sea. And as you know, the Atlantic coast makes a lot of noise. And so at night, the sound I would hear, there was no ambient noise, other than wind, was the regular beat of the waves, because we're very close to the shore. And if it was foggy, the boom of the foghorn. So it was literally the cadence that I was reared with. And I think those cadences stay in you, and they're in the Irish language, as you know. A lot of the singing and the poems in Irish have that cadence. But in this case, I did work for a very long time on marine with a loose team of marine biologists, various scientists, archaeologists, and so on. And I at one stage was invited for a trip, which I loved, on the Celtic Explorer, which is our marine research ship. And I am concerned, as we should be, specifically with the preservation of the ocean, because that's what I know. I don't know anything about land. I'm also concerned with the destruction of the culture around the small fishing industry, but that's another story. This is about how when scientists suddenly decide they're working on preservation and they try to make something sexy and they focus in on an animal. You won't be surprised to hear I have another one about a little seal.
Oh,
It says, I'm cute and I don't want to go back to the Arctic. I want to stay here and be fed. But however, this is the shark, and it's about one of the ugliest fishes in the sea, a dogfish. You know, he's not pretty and he's not, but he's now suddenly categorized biologically. I think he always has been as a shark, but he was known as a dogfish, and nobody really thought much of him. So now he gets a voice. Shark nursery. I am dogfish. When I hatch, I threaten nobody. We gather in nesting places in rock and coral. I am harmless, thrown back by trawlermen. Nobody eats me. Today, we're in the news. Scientists have observed a rare shark nursery off the west coast. Now we have status. I am a shark, suddenly, and my young, safe in their mermaids' purses, are treasure in a coral room. I am a black-mouthed cat shark now, shown some respect. That's nice. But inside, I'm still a dogfish, reviled.
Gisele, you have the translation, I think.
Yeah. O berçário de tubarão. Sou um esqualo. Enquanto choco, não ameaço ninguém. Costumamos nos juntar em ninhos incrustados em rochas e corais. Sou inofensivo. Dispensado por traineiras, não sirvo de comida a ninguém. Hoje estamos nos noticiários. Os cientistas observaram um raro berçário de tubarões na costa oeste. Agora somos considerados. Repentinamente sou um tubarão e a minha cria está segura nas caudas da sereia e são um tesouro numa sala de coral. Agora sou um tubarão gato insultado com algum respeito e consideração. Isso é bacana e tal, mas por dentro ainda sou um esqualo ultrajado. Obrigada.
É muito mais suave e mais bonito em português. Berçário, tubarão.
Thank you.
So our next poem is called The Singer. I love how you said in Myself, My Muse, Irish Women, Poets Reflect on Life and Art, that here in Ireland we had myth and song to preserve our stories, our belief in ourselves. And you also remind people that for Yeats, the true poet must achieve the condition of the great Shan-no singer. So do you think
that was me now? Anyway.
No, but you reminded us that, like Yeats said that you know we need to have this great Shan-no part of our tradition. And would you think that like poetry can ever reach the same level as songs or theatre?
Well, theatre and poetry are very close, as they were from the Greek. I mean, that's the other form that I would feel comfortable in, I suppose. I think they're very, very close. And you know, it's no accident that so many poets have either done versions of the Greek plays and they were very close in the Greek. I mean, it was verse. They were very close in a lot of traditions. But, and I think perhaps Yeats was interested in the masks, as am I. And I think what I might probably better have developed there would be the notion, I've always believed that Shan-no singing, which is, Gisele, is the unaccompanied singing without musical instrument, particularly of the west coast of Ireland, but not alone that. not at all, not particularly melodic in the modern sense, quite a different musical ear. But it's actually very mask-like. You don't show the emotions when you're singing sean-nós, you know. There's none of that. And so I have always thought it was the closest to Greek drama, actually, Susan,
Right.
for me. When I started reading the Greeks and reading about the masks, I immediately linked in with the notion of the sean-nós. So I mean, the singer in this case is a real singer, and he was a wonderful singer. And this is the truth. What he says in the poem is what he said to me the last time I ever met him. And he died some months later, and I was at his funeral. And there was a lot of singing.
I love how his name is Josie Sean Jack as well. You know, it's the real the tradition, Giselle, of keeping on the different names so that you would know them, because everybody had the same names. You know, there were very few names people selected from in those days in Ireland. So have, you know, John, Michael, Paul, Patrick, or Paddy Joe, you know, so
patronymic, really, you know, or the matronymic, because sometimes it was the mother's people, much in the way that I think the Portuguese added, but they added surnames.
Yeah.
You know, to each generation and to let go. And I saw it similarly, perhaps wrongly, I don't know.
And also, there's the José Maria and Maria José, very common in Portugal, right?
That's right. That's right there. So you need to have surnames to distinguish. I know.
Okay, do we want to start with the translation then, maybe, Giselle, this time?
Okay, but I'm skipping the Irish language, and I'm sorry about it.
Don't worry.
We don't, yeah.
No. Because I deliberately left it in Irish, but I have a translation. I should have sent you the translation, did I not?
No, it is, but I just don't know how to pronounce it.
No. Of course you have to skip the Irish, yeah. Sure. It can't be any worse than my Portuguese at the moment.
O cantor. Pela Bahia, os tubarões escondem os seus segredos dos peritos e turistas. Afinal, tem alguns outros predadores. Então protegem as suas próprias línguas, palavras raras são desviadas e mantidas em bancos. Quem teria condições de as comprar de volta? As palavras com pausas glotais, a moda antiga, e os ditongos com vogais abertas são ouro e prata, a memória codificada do cantor. Alguns temem que o balanço dos tubarões mar acima se extingua. Daí será o fim de tudo. Quando a costa se mostra limpa, pergunto se eles ainda compõem canções. Por estes tempos temos cortejado o silêncio, mas vez por outra oramos. Obrigada.
Obrigada. The singer, the Governor Josie Jean-Jacques, in memory of Josie Jean-Jacques. The sharks in the bay keep their secrets from experts and tourists. They have few other predators. They guard their language. Scarce words are stolen and kept in banks. Who could afford to buy them back? The words with old-style glottal stops and the broad vowel diphthongs are gold and silver to the singer, encoded memory. Some are afraid Basque will be stolen, then it will all be over. When the coast is clear, I ask if they are still composing songs. A cuach an cúnas a thomid nish, they answer. Choam gaham guimid. We're courting the silence now, but from time to time we pray, is the translation of the last lines. That's in memory of my friend and great singer, Josie.
Wonderful. So Mary, going back to your collection, A Perfect V, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the connections you bring up in the poem James Joyce Impersonates Pessoa.
Yeah, I love Fernando Pessoa, and for many, many years, I read mostly in Portuguese and Spanish.
Okay.
The poets from, I wasn't reading much in English other than the dead poets, so the contemporary and near contemporary were Pessoa, Neruda, Machado, some of the Brazilian poets, Silvia de Campo, various people for at least 10 years. And this is still the case today. But obviously I read a lot more in English as well now. But I loved Pessoa because of his tricksiness. I love that idea of having not just one or two personae, but I think the last count was something like 80 something.
Wow.
We won't go that far, but there were 4 major ones. And he looks like James Joyce. If you see pictures of Pessoa and pictures of Joyce, they look remarkably alike. And they did apparently meet once and nothing. There was no buzz, no connection, I don't believe. So I had this fantasy of the two of them getting, mixing one another up, where Pessoa thinks he's married to Nora, James Joyce's wife, and so on. Because I always wondered how Pessoa kept all the heteronyms separate, which he did, related to personalities, the main ones. So this is my sort of me having fun. And also James Joyce was very funny. Pessoa wasn't. James Joyce impersonates Pessoa. I am plural. I know and relish this. Heteronyms live in me. Alberto Caeiro is master. Others make do with an alter ego. I have multitudes. A rush of voices jumping up river, Anna, Livia, Plurabelle. Some don't make it. One of these days I'll finish my long book set in Lisbon on the 8th of March. That'll make them sit up. One of the others can get on with Dubliners. There are nights I'm afraid to sleep for fear of Alvaro's dreams. I'm not mad, only short-sighted. Ophelia Barnacle Queiroz, where did I leave my glasses? And Pessoa was depressed. And there was, and Ophelia Queiroz was the woman we think he might have been in love with. And oddly enough, in the last year, I think it's in the next book, I have another poem where I'm now mixing myself up with James Joyce on the continent, writing home for information about Connemara. James Joyce wrote endlessly to everyone for information, specific information to put in Ulysses.
Yeah.
A bit of fun at the boys' expense.
Giselle, are you going to read the translation of that one? Yes.
Yes, please. I'm delighted with that poem, Mary. Thank you so much. James Joyce.
Giselle, you know Pessoa's work.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to hear that Alberto Caeiro was his mentor, was Joyce's mentor. And I kept wondering, why Alberto Caeiro? Maybe you can tell us later.
I don't know. It seemed to make sense at the time. Yeah.
James Joyce encarna a pessoa. Sou plural. Sei disso e sabe-se bem. Heterônimos me habitam. Alberto Caeiro é meu mentor. Os outros se contentam em ser alter ego. Tenho multidões, uma vaga de vozes pulando o rio acima. Ana Lívia Plurabelle, alguns não conseguem. Dia desses, terminarei um longo livro ambientado em Lisboa, no 8 de março. Isso os instigará. Alguém deles, poderá se dar bem com os dublinenses. Há noites em que temo dormir, porque tenho medo dos sonhos do Álvaro. Não sou maluco, apenas míope. Ofélia Barnacle Queiroz, onde deixei meus óculos? Obrigada.
Wonderful. So maybe before we finish up, we might just, Mary, if you don't mind, touch on a very brief and relevant poem, one that you provide us with ideas on the interrelationships between Ireland and Portugal. Of course, we've got the sea and the writing and the words and the living. Your poem, Lisbon Revisited. Would you like to say something about that one?
Yeah, I went back to Lisbon. It's for my youngest grandchild. And it's also, part of it is, when I first went to Lisbon, I worked in a school on the Avenue de Liberdade, the great main avenue that runs down. And I always loved that avenue. And I was very young, you have to remember. I would run down there. I just loved being in a warm climate in a Latin country, insofar as, and I think it was the first time in my life I felt this total freedom of being away from Ireland, being away from the cold, being away from all of that, you know. But also, this is just a dream, really. Again, it's how the present and the past interact all the time in our minds. Things don't always turn out as we expect them to, as we picture them, as we're, you know, living our lives. But it's just how people entwine themselves into our lives, even if they're not physically there. And I did go back to Lisbon on one occasion, just myself and a couple of musicians. We were reading for Michael D, our president, was meeting the Portuguese president. But I had a day on my own just to walk. And I think I hadn't walked around Lisbon on my own since I was a young woman before, you know, because I had my husband, the kids, and so on. And I think the poem arose out of that. But long afterwards, after the little boy was born. There were nights I hoped the children would come, assemble themselves out of sun and roses, and I would dance with them out of the rain, down Avenida de Liberdade, the seeds of time in my hair, the moon and stars in my arms. It's no harm to say that Avenida de Liberdade would translate directly as the Avenue of Freedom, or you could say liberty. So that is consciously there in the poem as well, where that sense of freedom.
So Gisele, you have a translation?
Lisboa Revisitada, para Eli. Houve noites em que desejei que os filhos viessem e se juntassem, saídos do sol e das rosas, e eu com eles dançaria para além da chuva, Avenida da Liberdade abaixo, as sementes do tempo em meus cabelos, a lua e as estrelas em meus braços. Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Lovely. So before we go to our music, I'd like to thank you very, very much, Mary, for being with us today. It's been fantastic. These sort of sessions are wonderful for the people tuning in Sao Paulo, and the connections between Brazil and Ireland and poetry, and it just makes me feel very privileged to, you know, be able to get together with people who have all this in common. I was trawling through the internet looking for something nice, and I came across a beautiful adaptation of one of your poems, which I thought would be lovely to play today. I hadn't seen it before, but I was particularly struck with it. So maybe you'd like to say a few closing words before we leave with our special presentation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. And secondly, it's been a pleasure, Susan. Thank you very much. You've done a lot of work on this, and I appreciate it. And Gisele, it's been particularly moving for me to hear the poems in Portuguese. It really has. Thank you. And just musically, I suppose I have been very lucky to be able to work with musicians most of my life. And so seeing this video was a great surprise and a delight. So thank you again, Susan, for finding.
Yeah. Okay, Sally, maybe we'll finish up there. Then, would you like to add anything?
No, just, muito obrigada. Olá, São Paulo. Thank you very much.
Well, let's play the music then.
I marked him young and waited while he tended his book learning. I watched him dig and grow strong. Soon he could play and polish a song. Breathed deep and learned rhythm, rowing carracks in the Carnasan, rowing carracks in the Carnasan. He was a singer and the son of singers. I let him play and let him to the well. When his wild days were over, I saw him drink with a bog thirst. 1,000 songs, oh, he was fine, my young king of the sky, my young king of the sky. London, Newport, Philadelphia, New York, the path was laid out. All he had to do was sing. His face became the perfect mask for spirits, older than a priest's blessing to speak through. When he sang, no other woman had a chance. And in return, I put a burn of a turf fire, the swish of a girl's bright skirt, the ring of a horseshoe and stone in his throat.